Okay, today's video we're talking about your contact form or lead forms as some people call them on your landing pages or on your website. It could be actually. This is a PPC channel, so we talk about landing pages a lot here, so I'll just call them landing pages for now. The things that you basically do that'll kill the conversions on the actual implementation or the style of your contact form, what you can do with it, or should I say things you don't do with it, will actually hurt your conversion rates by up to 300% when you add up all the mistakes that you can make with it. So like if you did everything wrong, you could actually, basically go to where you're losing a ton of stuff. Now, respectively, you can't lose more than 300%, I get that, but these add up to, I have a whole bunch of different things I'm going to go through with you on this video today. Each thing in and itself has a potential to, lose 10, 20, 30, 50% on the conversion rate on your page if you screw it up, or should I say, if you do these things and you make the mistake that some people make with their forms, okay? So, respectively, I'm going to go through what each one of those things are, and I'll tell you how to avoid them. I'll tell you how to fix them if you're doing them, of course. And I'm also going to go through being able to identify, some other issues that you're making or potentially making, but also to prove to yourself that what I'm telling you here actually is involved in hurting your conversion rates and why you want to actually go after and do it. Confirm to yourself basically that what I'm talking about here is correct, and so that you have everything you need to go out and make those changes yourself. I'm also going to talk about things like CAPTCAs. I made this video specifically because the issues with our clients here at Guarantee PPC having CAPTCAs on their site and on their contact forms, it's a huge mistake to do that. There's other ways to not use a CAPTCA to be able to avoid the issue with spam. So I tell you about how to get rid of CAPTCAs, how much the CAPTCAs are affecting your conversion rate, and i.e. how much money you're making for PPC or other traffic sources, and how to get that spam issue down without it. Because obviously a lot of clients have either they're using CAPTCAs or they're using a tool to weed out spam from a contact form. Both those things hurt your conversions, respectively. And if you do nothing, obviously you get so many contact form fills that your salespeople will miss leads, or they'll start going to the spam folder, and they miss leads there because it's in the spam folder. So with form spam, contact form spam is a big issue that I see all the time. People making mistakes with the implementation of their contact forms to gather a contact form or a lead form lead. They don't want to call, they're filling out a contact form. So how I feel the best way is to do your contact form so you don't have any spam, so you don't miss any leads, and none of the leads basically get blocked, and people don't get too frustrated that they just say, screw it, they're not going to fill out your form anyway. So I will cover that as well. So before all that though, I will get into a quick prelude here, as I usually do in my videos. There are multiple ways you could really screw up something as simple as a contact form to capture the leads from your PPC campaigns to get them to work. So you do all this work to get people to, filtered out so you have the right people come into your site, and then if your form isn't set up the right way, you may neuter your capacity to be, have your conversion rate to a certain level to be competitive, that all of it was for nothing. And respectively, you got to at least know the basics going in about contact forms, not to make all the rookie mistakes. If you don't, these are the main things. If you don't do all these things, you basically should be mostly fine to be competitive in whatever market you're in. If you do it wrong, you'll lose half or more of your leads before you even start talking to them. I made a whole side video, by the way, about 15 or so videos ago. I'm going to start linking my past videos and my videos in the future. I haven't done that yet. So that because one topic goes into another. There's all kinds of different lost revenue where there's different situations where you can lose revenue after they filled out the contact form, namely how fast it takes you to respond. A lot of people in the marketing space and industry know that if you don't respond within 15 minutes, you're already taking a hit on how many people are going to reply to your contact form. Up to 50% won't even respond if you don't respond in that first 15 minutes. Whereas if you just do that one thing and respond within the first 15 minutes, you could basically have twice as many people contact rate. 90% of people will respond if you do it within the first 15 minutes, as per the studies that are out there. Okay? And there's a tool that you can use that when somebody fills out the contact form that I talk about on that video, where when somebody fills out the contact form, the software takes the phone number that is in the contact form field from the phone number field, calls the pre-designated number, that your number basically, and plays a automated audible message that says, John Smith filled out your contact form. Would you like to talk to him? Press 1 if you would like to connect with John Smith. And you can make sure your salespeople always respond within 15 minutes. So along with all this other stuff, if you're going to go ahead and do this, that's something that's so easy to implement, and it basically enforces the right policies from now on at your company. As long as, of course, you also got people that answer the phone on the first time, which is another separate thing I talk about on that same video, how the wait times and the number of rings that it takes to answer and the hold time all goes into hurting your conversion rates as well. So if you just tighten up, and then of course the follow-up, but if you tighten up that, you'll have monumental increases in how much money you can make from the same exact traffic coming in. Obviously more so, some spaces it skews to where people fill out contact forms more. In some other spaces, 90% of people will just call. So if you're in a space where people are heavily filling out the form, this is highly valuable information for you to learn and do, and make sure that you have the basis of knowing how to do it the bare minimum right way to be competitive in your ad space, given that everybody else is paying XYZ price per visitor to their site. You being in a position where you're at least to the level where you have the potential to make a profit from that market rate of traffic in your space, people looking to buy your products or service coming in. So it could be product sellers of, that sell expensive products where human or a touch is involved in the process, usually $100 plus, or services, cheap items. Obviously, you guys are not going to be helped so much. People don't contact you usually, asking questions before they buy. So, but the main thing is here, you don't watch what you're doing, you watch what they're doing. If you want to be able to do very well with making sure there's no friction in the part where they've already decided to fill out your contact form, or you've got your call to action being the contact form, or one of the call to actions for that user to go ahead and take an action with you that you want them to do, to be able to get rid of, there are certain things you can do to make sure that there is no friction there, respectively. There always will be some, because people hate filling out contact forms. There was a study that showed that people would really rather, on average, clean a toilet than fill out a contact form, because a lot of people can't type fast. People on the phone, it's very difficult to type in a form. So this is why this stuff has such a big impact on your conversion rates. But respectively, there's a software out there, like one of them is called Hotjar, where you can video record the sessions of as people come from your PPC campaign to your landing page. You can watch everything they're doing on that page, but when they get to the contact form, obviously, are they getting to it and then not filling it out? Or when they get to it, you can also watch what they hover over. Are they getting, and it shows you every click, shows you everything they type in. You can physically see yourself, are they getting stuck at different parts? if they're getting stuck at a certain part, you can consider either taking that part out, adding a little question mark speech bubble thing, or where they hover over it and it says, to be able to fill this one in, here are some tips, which is another way to increase the amount of people that will get through your form and to reduce, what they call friction in the process. The less friction there is, the more people that will fill out your form. But there are a bunch of other just things as it pertains to how the form is set up, how it's laid out, how it's implemented, that will also affect your conversion rates at a macro level, instead of making small changes like maybe we don't have this field, maybe we add a little bit more information so that they can fill this field out. You can watch what they're doing, but as you're watching what they're doing, you can see if there's other problems. And if you have all of these other things, watch it for yourself. You can do what I tell you to do here on each one of these main, gotcha type things where people most commonly make mistakes. Change it, and then through the video recording software like Hotjar, see for yourself how they spend less time filling it out. Basically, if you time on average the amount of times, two things. You monitor how many people get to the form and abandon. What's your form abandonment rate? And you can do that before and after you implement these things to know that you did it right. I can tell you that you're doing it right, but you should never take my word for it. You should measure before and after you make a big change like this. And then, of course, you time how long it takes them to get through it, which is a secondary point of information that can be helpful to you, because obviously the less time it takes them to do it, the more the conversion rate is going to be. So before you have the macro level data that, yes, this many more people fill out the form now that get to it, you can use the time reference to make some quicker decisions potentially. So that one's optional. But anything that you're doing if you got a working campaign right now, don't just go make wild changes. That's amateur stuff. That's people who don't make very much money, because you get into a situation where you make a change and then it doesn't work. Something else might be going on, and then you panic, you remove it, and you don't get what you want done. You got to make one change. You got to be able to stick with it until you have what is called statistical significance, i.e. enough data to know whether what you did was correct or not correct, and then move on to the next change. And then you do that over and over and over again. And over time, you keep get more results, more conversion rates from your overall traffic. So anyway, here's the list of things. Now, the first thing, as per in the title, I talked about again, I'm going to also heavily cover about CAPTCAs and spam issues and stuff like that with your forms. If you have an issue with spam, how to take care of it, how not to take care of it. CAPTCAs affect conversion rates. You can go to see this study for yourself. A lot of these things I actually know from personal experience working on clients' forms, how much this stuff affects your conversion rates, because we've tested it. There's a lot of them I just got from a website, acquireconvert.com/conversion form. No space between conversion form. On some of this other stuff that I already know doesn't work ideally, so if we're going to set up a form, we get away from it. Respectively, if somebody has on their main site outside the landing page some form, I don't usually get into split testing that stuff because it's a little outside of our work, but there's just certain things I don't do on a landing page, so I never get to test before and after. I start with the things that mostly work every time. But obviously you may have a form where you are doing this stuff, but most often at some point I get from the client that they get a bunch of spam and then they try to fix it. They'll try to do two things to fix their spam. They'll add a spam blocker, and I mentioned this on other videos, I've seen on spam blockers where it blocks 50% or more of the leads. And it will go, they'll put the spam blocker on the form. Like if they have a WordPress site, for instance, there'll be a plugin that they can use for that. And it'll do a good job blocking the spam, that's for sure, but it'll also block leads too. They don't have those things perfected like you think they do, where it just blocks out spam. And you're dealing with tight, slim margins and all that. When you're in business, you can't afford to lose even 10% of your leads to get rid of your spam. Maybe if you're wildly successful, you can, but that's a really idiotic thing considering you do so much to make so little in your operations, and then to just throw away 10 or more % of your money because you have a spam blocker there. But people will install the spam blocker. They won't tell me. They'll say, Corey, why are the leads down? And then I'll check everything, and then I know I got to test the form because maybe they changed it. Maybe they changed something on their site that broke their form, whatever. And a lot of times that's the issue. A lot of times they install the spam blocker because they thought they had the great idea. Oh, I hate these spam ones that come through. Oh, I will put a spam blocker in there. But they don't think, I'm going to test this to make sure the good leads don't go through or get blocked. Respectively, if they had a spam blocker, you should have any contact form sends leads to your email. Any good one that you want, Gravity Forms for WordPress, if you're talking about WordPress here, is a good one that actually stores the lead. You want to be able to, if it fails to send to your email or whatever, you got a backup database source for that can be accessed. But the spam blocker, I haven't found one, but they should actually tell you which ones they blocked versus which ones they didn't block. And so you could double check you didn't miss any leads. But respectively, if you go back to what I told you about response times, which is why I threw that in, if you don't respond within the first 15 minutes, the actual rate in which you get to get in physical phone contact with that form lead, you call them up later on. If you don't do it within the first 15 minutes, you're going to have half or less what you would have had if you would have responded in the first 15 minutes. So you don't find it out till later, well, that's too late already. And people are going to go into their database and check. They normally, your salespeople, they check their email. When an email comes in, that's when they respond. So all around, I mean, technically, I guess you could train them to check the backup, check the spam versus the not spam. That's wasting their time at the very least, but the spam blocker in any case, I don't think makes sense. What you need to do is you need to find out how to spam. You can block spam because sometimes you'll get 50 spam things a week or whatever. And so I agree. I empathize with the business owners too. But CAPTCAs aren't the way to do it either, because they will you might take a 33% hit on your conversion rate. Now that may not be the case every time. It depends on the CAPTCHA. If it's just like, what's 1 + 7? That might be, and there's other CAPTCHA studies out there, like a 10%. I did quite a bit of research on this before the video that I made here, but might be 10%. Whereas the stupid ass ones, where it's like, which one of these are boats? And then, okay, God, I'm done with that. Okay, which one of these are cars? Okay, which one of these are signs? And people, the longer it takes for them to do that, the more people are just going to say, screw it, I'm out of here. There was also a study I seen for the people that that are visually impaired. The audio caption version of it takes 30 seconds on average to respond, and 90% of people abandon that. It's like almost worthless. So that should put into perspective how much it can affect your conversion rates depending on how much of a pain in the ass it is. So what do you do though in exchange? What you do is you custom code the form and you don't make yourself a target of spam. Just like I mentioned, I made a video about getting your site hacked and having adware, a malware, or whatever you want to call it, put on your site, where they'll put like a link back to their website on your site. And they look for sites that have a certain theme or certain, if it uses WordPress or whatever, a certain version, because they know they've already hacked that theme and that version. And if they can find another site with that same version, they know they can get into it already because they know where the password form is and they have a password cracker and that whole thing. I mean, so it's just like walking down the street. If you had, $100 bill, stack of $100 bills hanging around your neck, walking down the street in New York somewhere, you're gonna get mugged, whatever. If you have a contact form, which is a standard off-the-shelf contact form, like contact form 7 for WordPress is the most common one. The people that do form spam that are trying to generate traffic back to their site, like go to this website, of course, is what they put in those website forms when they spam it. And they have software that not only scans for people that have that contact form 7, but then also automatically, of course, as you can imagine, import or input the whatever it needs to be put in the form and to submit it so they can send you that spam. So, and they can do hundreds a day like this, but they can't do it. The software, it's another analogy here is, why doesn't Mac products get hacked? Well, because like 90% of all the computers people are on a PC. So if you're a hacker, what are you going to, and you're going to do make a virus or malware or whatever, what are you going to build it for? Mac or PC? Why, if you're, okay, I don't even care if I don't get Mac. I'm not going to waste time to build one for Mac. I'm just going to go after the 90%. That's the same exact thing here. They're going to go after common contact form systems. So you can get around that by building your own contact form and not using an out of the box solution. But that is only going to get you so far as well. When people hack your website, the one thing they always do, like if you have WordPress or a common outside the box platform, they already know if you go to, like for WordPress, /WP_admin, and that's the page where you log in. So if they're going to have a password cracker, they're going to look for sites where they know where the password is to be, the login area is. Whereas if you just change the location of that login page to something else, you're not even on the radar for everybody else that does this anymore. That one simple little thing. That's how you need to be thinking about your form. How can we change the form in terms of the labels? Because they'll also have form spam tools that will look for forms in plain HTML that doesn't use a plugin of some sort. And it'll look for like what they call footprints, name, address, whatever, and it knows that if it finds something, it'll scan all the code on the page, the web code, by viewing source, and if it finds name, address in combination, that footprint generally indicates that that's a form, and it'll go ahead and try. Okay, that's really that simple. So what you need to be thinking about doing is, how can I name the fields so that something, when that crawler comes to my page, which it eventually will, they're not going to pick up that this is even a contact form in the first place. So, respectively, it's a little hard to do, but one way you can get around it is if the form says name and address on the contact form fields, but that's an image instead of text, and the fields are named something else, then you're going to be completely off the radar. So that's one trick, but long story short, if you just don't use the most common ones, you're mostly fine. And if you go ahead and you start changing the field labels in terms of in the coding, then you're really off the radar. So I know that's not the easy, simple solution, but you're going to lose leads no matter what using a CAPTCA. This isn't maybe. You're losing leads with a CAPTCA, right? The traffic, you spend 10 grand a month on advertising. You're going to spend $1,000 a month forever because you want a CAPTCA and you don't want to change your form. That's idiotic. And the spam blocker plugins, that's even more idiotic because those are totally unpredictable. So anyway, that's the answer for the whole spam issue. Now I'm going to get into some other, we'll just call them idiotic things that a person could do to how they execute that form to set it up from the start to have some level of failure already baked into the cake, if you will. I'm not calling anybody idiotic here, but everybody started out not knowing anything, but you can just hurdle over all of these mistakes with just this one video, because I've compiled all the information kind of basically in one place where what all the main mistakes are. So anyway, the next thing on my list here to cover, or first thing from the bottom list here, the make title and button describe what you're fully getting. So this one, you can get a 25% increase if you just if let's say I have a house foundation repair company. If the contact form says contact us on the very top of the contact form, let's say this is the contact form. At the top, you have to have something at the top, right? If it says, instead of contact us, which most people, lazy people would do, if it says get free foundation repair quote. That right there will get you an extra so many percentage points of conversion rate on your page. Second to that, the other main important thing in terms of the copy, web copy on that form, is the button. If the button says submit, you're going to lose conversions. If it says get my instant foundation quote now, or get my instant quote now, or something like that, you'll get more conversions. You can look at our own website, guaranteeppc.com. Look how I do my form. Please help me fix my broken site now, because that stuff works. So if you don't have that, that's a 5-minute change to get upwards of 25% higher conversion rate on your page. These are hypothetical. I'm not saying you'll get a 25% increase, and it obviously depends on finding out the most ideal way of wording those two things, but that's possible, okay? Next is on my list, drop-downs versus radio buttons. So, just so that you know, a drop-down menu is when you obviously click on something and then a whole menu pops down. So on your form, if you're like trying to say, what do you have? A car, a truck, a semi, whatever, in terms of what you're trying to get a quote on. Let's say you're trying to sell your vehicle and you ask them to specify it in a drop-down. If you change that drop-down to what radio button, so basically radio button is like these circles, and you got truck, semi, car, and then you just simply click the one next, you click the circle next to it, and then the circle has a dot inside of it. That's a radio button. I just wanted to specify that. That right there, you can get upwards of 15% more conversion rate just with that one thing as well. Why? We'll go back to friction. The least time it takes for people to basically figure out how to complete your form and actually do it, there's two elements there, the higher compliance rate you're going to get. When you're looking at a drop-down, it's harder to go through visually and look at each thing, whereas on a radio button, it's easier to read. So if it can confuse the user, that's one thing, but if it's easier also to fill out, that's another thing that can increase your conversion rate. The radio buttons as a whole are easier for somebody to get through, basically, okay? So that's that. Then there's also autofill forms. So respectively, now this only applies to some of you guys, but I'm sure you've seen it or whatever, if I filled out a form on your site once and they come back, they should not have to refill out the form again. It should have through cookies or another means that whatever can be pre-filled for the user should be, because you can get 20 to 40% higher conversion rates by having it filled out for the user. Now another way this can be used is, let's say, respectively, I am going to sell my car, going back to that again, and the keyword was sell my truck. And so I take them to instead of a sell my vehicle page, I take them to a sell my truck page. And on the form it says, instead of asking, do you have truck, whatever, it just says, it just eliminates that basically. And when the form comes in, you know that it's a truck already, or essentially it'll say, I would like a quote on my truck. And then if you're scared that they got to the page on accident, it can have truck pre-selected, and there's an option to select something else. So there's different ways of doing this. But that right there in itself eliminates, obviously, the need to have to fill that in. So you can basically instead of having one form for your entire website, you can take what you know about the user based upon what page they're on, and have the field pre-selected for the user for whatever can be pre-selected, because ultimately each field adds a reduction in the rate of people which will actually complete the form. The more fields you have, the less conversion rate you'll have. That's why if you can get by with it, I always what I'm going to recommend is first name, last name, email, and that's it, and phone number. Because all that other stuff can be picked up on the phone. Unless you got so many leads and you don't have time to answer all your leads, you do the pre-qualification after the form fill out because it takes 2 seconds on the phone anyway. So, respectively, if you have to have all those form fields, you're just stuck on it, then try to have them at least pre-filled out as much as you can. Even one field, because name, email, phone number are easy to fill out in terms of thinking, in terms of the brain power it takes to think the what to put in. Once you get to the question of what do you have that you would like to sell, if you have it pre-selected, that's a harder one. Even though it's a simple question, it'll affect your conversion rate more than you think if you have the right thing pre-selected and allow them potentially to select another one, or just to say, for my, and then truck, and then they have to click on it to select something else, but basically it's selected by default. You can get, another 20% conversion rate a lot of times. If the whole form is filled out, of course, mostly for them, because it's the second time that they came to your site to fill out a form, you can get closer to obviously 40% conversion rate increases on your page, because that would have a bigger impact. So think about what could be done for the user. Sentence style of form. So this is an interesting one. Basically, on this acquireconvert.com/conversion form, they show most people, your contact form is like name, and then below it address, and then below it telephone number, below it what do you want to tell us, whatever, and then a submit button, whatever. That's always how forms usually are, right? Why instead of that, if you want to so if somebody's going back to the previous example, they're selling a vehicle, I want to sell and then there's a drop-down box and then there's a blank where they put in how much they'd like to sell it for, and then date, whatever information you need from them still, and you put it in form of a sentence like that. Why? I don't know exactly for sure. I'm thinking mainly because going back to what I was saying before about, remember I told you that there was a study that confirmed that people would rather clean a toilet than fill out a contact form. Well, when you kind of disguise a contact form in a sentence like that, people don't see it as a contact form. Because they see the contact form and they're like, oh, shit, I don't want to fill out a contact form. But when you do it like that, it's kind of engaging in a way, and it doesn't seem like a contact form anyway. And it seems less daunting because all you're doing is you're asking for one thing at a time, which kind of goes along with the whole fact that if you have your contact form broken up into multiple steps where they have to enter some of the information and then click next and next, or basically click submit, and then it goes to a few more questions, that increases conversion rates. Where you're breaking it down into bite-sized chunks, you'll have a better conversion rate on your page because of that. The sentence style can get you another 20% if you just take the form and see if you can restructure it in terms of a sentence. Obviously, a certain business would have to do that, but technically, like for the foundation repair company, you could do it as well. I would like a quote on my foundation repair at, if you need to ask for their address, and then where their address is, then even though you didn't need date, you could obviously put date on there to make it flow with what you're doing. Please call me at telephone number, which is another blank, and do it that way. Give it a shot. Great thing about all of these things here is you basically are risking $100 or a few $100 worth of potential loss as you're doing the test to earn tens of thousands of dollars long term if it works. And basically, more than likely, these will work. So, it's as good a bet as any. So anyway, moving forward, no two passwords. Now, this is another one that a lot of you guys probably can't use that are generating leads for, foundation repair company or whatever, people looking to, you want to buy old vehicles from people, whatever. Password. So if you... everybody knows what I'm talking about here, though. If you ask for the password, if you ask them to retype the password, they get really pissed off because they can't remember the password they typed in because the password has all asterisks. If you had to have them type in the password, I would recommend not using asterisks or have a button to reveal, at least have that option so they don't have asterisks covering it up. And then with that, if you have asterisks and then you have to ask them to type it in again, that's actually pretty difficult. On this study here at Acquire Convert, they showed where the conversion rate would be 50% less if you ask them to type in the password twice like that with the asterisks. Amazing to me, but that's what they got. And so, respectively, it's there because we want people to not forget their password, but it's not worth losing 50% of your conversion. So why would anybody want to do that? And if they knew, I think if the people that run these big companies that have these sites and all that knew, they don't think they would do it. Nobody would do it. In general, if you go through the form yourself and you're frustrated at all, the consumer is going to be 10 times more frustrated. So that should be the minimum standard of what you're trying to do with your form. Multi-step form. So respectively on this Acquire Convert, most shopping carts have this now where it's a 3-step process. You're not entering in all your customer information on one screen. You have to fill it in and then you click next, and then like first it's billing, and then the next screen is shipping, and then the next screen is the credit card information. So if you have it all on one screen, they already showed that you can get a 15% increase in conversions just from doing that, breaking it up into 3 parts. Another way you can do it, I've seen, is they have what they call accordion style. So it can be all the same page, but all the other blanks aren't showing until you've completed just the billing. And then once you completed the billing, now it's like it'll be here and then it'll collapse, and then right below it, the next one will expand. It's called the accordion style. Now, I use these multi-step forms all the time. The multi-step forms can increase your conversion rates by 50% alone. It's huge, actually, in quite a few cases. Not always. Sometimes it might be 10%. But it's up to 50% here, where you're just going to, instead, if you have more than 5 fields, definitely use a multi-step form where you're only asking for a maximum of 5. And then I wouldn't say next, I would say submit. Even though that's kind of tricking them, well, it is what it is. Then they get to the next page where they have to fill in the next bit of information. But more effectively, generally, is to ask them for the bare minimum up front as possible. Name, email, phone, and then submit. And then that's when you can ask more stuff. Why? Because that'll get an even better conversion rate than asking name, email, phone, and then, what kind of car you have. Because there's a consistency and commitment psychological principle that basically in psychology that says once somebody's invested their time in a process, they're less likely to abandon the more that they feel like they've committed into the process already. So it just it kind of capitalizes on that psychological, if you want to call it weakness, of people that that they've already gotten through some of it. They're going to finish now. Some people really abuse that and they get to the end and like, give me your credit card information. I don't believe in that stuff. But if you have 10 fields and you want to break it down into just offering 3 and 3 steps, you usually get a conversion rate increase from that, basically every time. So that's another thing to consider for people that are, when we're not talking about a shopping cart, we're just talking about a typical everyday contact form. The next one is vertical versus horizontal. So I never did this, even back when I was an amateur. For some reason, some people have, instead of the form being like a horizontal form, name, email, address, like that, they'll have like name, email to the right of it, address to the right of it, phone number to the right of it, like across the page. I never knew why people would do that. It doesn't even look right. It doesn't even look like it would work well. But if you do that, you can lose up to 50% of your conversion rate. Going back to the Acquire Convert study, because I don't do that. I don't know if that's the case or not, but that definitely tested that. And a great thing about that site as well is they show you visually what the form looked like before and after, and then they also show the statistical significance of their test. So should be very, very reliable in terms of counting on their data. So anyway, never use a horizontal form, basically. Doesn't make any sense. I can't think of a single we'll just say ever. Never, ever use a horizontal form. Halt words. Some people, and this is another idiotic thing that I shouldn't keep saying idiotic, because some of you guys might be doing this stuff. But they will say, we will not spam you on the bottom of the form. Why would you do that? Well, if you had a sales background, you would know not to do that. Because they're the top real estate agent in the world, I believe for the country or world, US at least, had said they did a bunch of split testing to figure out what words not to say and what words to say, which is part of how they got to the top. And one of the things was like, when you get the contract, you give them the contract. Never say the word contract. And never say the word sign. Go ahead and search for top real estate agent speech. You'll be able to find this guy because he speaks a lot. And he has a bunch of small things like that, which makes a lot of sense. And the way that he explained it was, people tie words and experiences with other words or other experiences that they tie words that they hear to past experiences. So when they hear the word contract, they think about other times there was a contract and whether they liked it or didn't like it. And a lot of times, more often than not, companies don't follow through with what they say. And they think about those experiences because you said the word contract. Whereas if you didn't say, if you said, here's the paperwork, instead of contract, they don't think about all those other times that they had a bad experience signing a contract. You also never want to say deal, because then they think, I know about other bad deals. And it's just another cycle where they tie things together psychologically. So best way to say it is to coin your own phrases in the sales process. But when you're talking about the form, it's the same thing. Why are you going to say spam? Then they're going to think about all the other times they filled out a form before and they got spammed. So don't do that. So what I call the halt words here. Don't talk about how you're not going to get spammed because they're just going to think about getting spammed. Don't talk about not getting whatever. Anything that could be connotated as negative. Don't include that. Don't say you're not good. Don't say we won't X, because they're going to think you're going to do X. Just by having we will not spam you, on that acquire convert study, they showed you get a 15% reduction in your conversion rate just from that one tiny thing. And then second to last here is the inline validation. So inline validation on the form is where you may program your contact form or lead form to require that the data that's sent to your database behind the form is in a certain format so that the database is going to be consistent. The phone number may have to have 8 digits versus 7 or something like that. So, or your email address, it may, basically, if you put like fu.com, or fu.com, it's not even looking like an address. It'll say, this is not an address. Or I've seen a lot of times where it's like, if you put in fu@gmail.com, it'll be like, this is not a right email. They have smarter tools like that. But you're going to do that stuff. What they found was, at this acquire convert study, which makes a lot of sense. I knew this before. We don't actually do the validation more than you have to fill out the form field. Why? Because why were we going to slow people down? The more you slow them down, they have to go back, the more people are going to leave because they're pissed off and they're tired of it. They've got a lot of stuff to do. Everybody wants to take their time, nip at their heels for their time. Why do it? We'll pay our salespeople to do it. But when they get to the bottom of the form, there's like 10 fields there. They click submit, and then it's like, this one's wrong, this one's wrong, this one's wrong. A lot of times they'll just say, F this, and I'm out of here. If you do it while they're filling in the form, they'll be less overall pissed. And they'll still be pissed more than if you didn't do that. Like, please put your telephone number in the right format. And then you're saying, I did put it in there. And then you're like, do they want the one before it? Everybody, I'm sure you're all shaking your head. We've all been there. not only that really confuses them. So if you're going to do it, you better tell them exactly what an example is, what you're asking for, if you're going to do it at all. But also, if you're going to do it, right away before they get to the next field, you tell them that they did it wrong, and you again tell them exactly what you're expecting the end result to look like, and don't wait to the end and say you got 3 more, because they're like, I'm done, submit, and then 3 of these I have to go back and mess around with and try to figure out what format they want. No way. And they're gone. So anyway, 20% more conversion rate when you get the validation that you give them the validation saying that the data is not in the right format as soon as they go and fill in the form. So basically, realistically, you type it in, it's going to say it's not right until you've typed it in right and what the example is. And then once they get it right, they can go to the next one. Again, go down, you click submit, and then it tells you that 3 of them are wrong. You get a 20% lift. So that's that. I have one other bonus here that I threw in here for you guys. So field labels. Field labels are what, you have the field that you want them to put in their name or whatever, and then what's next to it is called the field label, like first name next to the actual space for first name where they put their name in. The field where they put the space where they put the name in is the field, and then the field label is basically the description that tells you what to put in that blank. Okay, so you can have a form, right? And you can have your blank. You could have like first name here, blank. Last name here, blank. Phone number here, blank. That's one way to do it. All right. And the other way you can do it is you have your form field and you have your name. You have here. Let's say that this one my finger right here is the name field. You have name here instead of having it over to the left. And then down below where you have the last name, you do last name right here. You would and actually have the field label left aligned with the left side of the field versus totally to the left of the field altogether with the space between the field label and the field itself. So in other words, I should probably draw this real quick. So okay, so this is let's say this is a form. This is to do it inline, as they call it. And then you could also do first, last. So there's like a space between the field label and the field blank, right? But it's to the left, not directly in line. So basically, you do it this way, you'll get a considerably higher conversion rate, typically on average. That's the one that's not real obvious. So a lot of you guys probably could get a good lift from that, which is why I put it on the bonus here. It probably helped the most people out, I would say, other than the CAPTCA thing and the spam thing. Even with that, probably the most people doing that than anything else that I labeled. You can get between a 5 and a 30% lift just by doing that. That's something I've personally tested myself. You're not going to find that in Inquire Convert, but I've personally tested that myself. So if they found out before that actually was true, because I go through and read these kind of studies all the time, and I was surprised when I seen that, but it does make sense why that's the case. Visually, to me, it visually looks better. So part of it also, I mentioned it could be less confusing and quicker to figure out. Those are 2 elements that determine what your conversion rate is on the people and your compliance rate on filling out the form. There's a third really element with the form, and it's you're talking about landing pages as a whole, which is eye appeal. Does it look sexy? Does it look appealing? your brain and your eyes are trained to look at things longer if it is attractive. You look at a hot chick longer than an average chick. Well, as it comes to artwork, you can call a form a piece of art, because it really is. You look at something, that artwork that you have there, longer if it's more eye appealing. So in other words, another way to put it is, I want to look at it. So you got my attention more willingly if you got something that's really sexy to my eyes. And then from there, I still have to make it not confusing and easy to do to really get the full benefit, the full conversion rate I can. But still, if you do everything I say here, your form looks like dog crap, you're still not going to get that great of results. You'll get better, because they're all elements still that, it doesn't matter basically on your form design, but that's another thing to really take into consider. And that's why having good graphics designers are worth their weight in gold. Good graphics designers know how to, it's not about just can they design well, but can they lay stuff out in a way in terms of the white space and the alignment and the balancing of the elements on the page so they balance well to be eye appealing. Because if it's eye appealing, you're going to want to stay on the page longer. That's just how it is. And only certain graphics designers can do that. And typically the ones that can do that well are charging $150,000 a year salary minimum. They're called UX, UI designers, and even them, there's not very many good ones that can really take raw content that you need to have on there and make something that looks dead sexy when you look at it. It's worth your weight. It's worth every penny doing that. But sites that are designed that well, like if you're going to build the whole site, you're talking about a 6-figure site, because the designers are $100 an hour or whatever, and it takes a while to build a site. So anyway, I'm getting off topic. That's the last thing for you to potentially be able to improve your numbers on your contact forms. And so yeah, that's a bunch of different ideas for you to make more money from your landing pages and your PPC traffic that you have coming in right now, and how to take care of that form spam so you don't have any more without cutting into how much money you're making again with your PPC campaigns. If you like this video, I have a ton of other videos on this channel about other PPC money making strategies. If you want to make a lot of money with PPC, you can definitely find a bunch of stuff on how to do that on this channel. I have a blog at guaranteedppc.com/blog with step-by-step instructions on how to build PPC campaigns the way that I build them for our clients here to guarantee their results. If you want information laid out to you along those lines, you can find it there. If you have any questions about forms, anything that I talked about here that wasn't quite clear, leave me a comment down below. I get back to every single person who leaves me a comment on this channel, typically within a day or two time personally. With that said, hope to see you in my next video, and have a good one.